Welcome back to Fluent Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Fluent, and today we have a very special guest with us. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm a little nervous, but I'm happy to be here.
That's perfectly okay. And you know what? That nervousness you're feeling right now, that's exactly what we want to talk about today. Our topic is overcoming the fear of speaking English. And Anna, you're the perfect person to share this experience with our listeners.
Right.
So Anna, let's start with something many of our listeners can probably relate to. You understand English really well, I can tell from our conversation before we started recording. But when it comes to speaking,
Oh, that's different. Yes, I can read books, watch movies, I understand everything. But when I need to speak, my heart starts beating so fast. I worry about my pronunciation, my grammar, if people will understand me.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think too much about the words before I say them, and then I forget what I wanted to say.
Wow, absolutely. That overthinking is so common. It's like your brain becomes this perfectionist editor, right? Tell me, have you had any experiences that made this fear stronger?
Oh, yes. I remember one time at work, I was in a meeting with my team. I had great ideas to share, but when I started talking, I mixed up my words. I said, I am very exciting about this project instead of excited.
Right.
Everyone laughed, and I know they weren't being mean, but I felt so embarrassed. I didn't speak for the rest of the meeting. After that meeting, I went back to my desk and I felt so small. I kept replaying that moment in my head over and over. I started wondering if people thought I wasn't smart enough for my job just because of one little mistake with English.
Oh, that imposter syndrome is so real. It's like one small language slip makes us question everything about ourselves, isn't it? Did that experience change how you approached speaking in meetings after that?
For months, I would write everything down before meetings, every single word I wanted to say. I would practice in my car before going in, but even then, when it was my turn to speak, I would just freeze. My heart would race, and I think, what if I mess up again? So I just nod and agree with others instead of sharing my own ideas.
That's such a common pattern. We go into this protective shell. But something must have changed for you because you're here talking to us now. Was there a turning point?
Yes, actually, it was my daughter. She's 7 years old, and she was learning to ride her bicycle. She kept falling off, getting frustrated, crying. One day she said, Mama, I'm too scared to try again. What if I fall? And I told her, Sweetheart, falling is how you learn to balance. And then it hit me. I was doing exactly what I was telling her not to do.
Wow, that's powerful. Kids have this amazing way of showing us our own fears, don't they?
Exactly. I realized I was avoiding speaking English the same way she was avoiding the bicycle. So I made a decision. I would fall off my English bicycle on purpose. I started putting myself in situations where I had to speak, even if it wasn't perfect.
I love that approach. So you basically decided to embrace the messy learning process. What kinds of situations did you deliberately put yourself in?
Oh my goodness, so many. First, phone calls. They're the worst, right? You can't see facial expressions or body language. I started calling restaurants to ask about their hours instead of checking online. I called the doctor's office to make appointments instead of using the app. My voice would shake at first, but each time got a little easier.
Phone calls are definitely the ultimate test. No visual cues, just pure language. What other situations did you challenge yourself with?
Social situations. Those are tricky because there's pressure to be interesting and funny, not just clear. I started going to my daughter's school events and forcing myself to chat with other parents. Not just, hi, how are you? But real conversations about weekend plans, school activities, even complaining about the weather together. Small talk is actually very hard.
Oh, small talk is an art form. It seems simple, but it's actually quite complex culturally and linguistically. Did you try anything in your professional environment again after that first difficult meeting experience?
Yes, I signed up to give a presentation voluntarily. Can you believe it? It was just a 5-minute update about my project, but for me, it was like climbing Mount Everest. I prepared for weeks. I recorded myself speaking. I practiced with my family. The day came, and you know what? I made mistakes. I said statistic when I meant statistics, and I forgot a few words. But people understood me. They asked good questions, and I answered them. It wasn't perfect, but it was communication.
That's incredible growth, Anna. From silence in meetings to voluntarily presenting. And you've touched on something so important. It doesn't have to be perfect to be effective communication. You know what? I think you'd be surprised to learn how often even native speakers stumble during presentations. Oh, Anna, I can imagine how that felt. But you know what? I bet everyone in that room has made similar mistakes. Even native speakers mix up exciting and excited sometimes. We're human beings, not dictionaries.
Really? Native speakers make mistakes too?
Oh, all the time. Just yesterday I said I could care less when I meant I couldn't care less. My wife corrected me and we both laughed about it.
That makes me feel better.
Good. Now I'm curious, have there been any moments when you felt proud of your English speaking? Maybe small victories that made you think, hey, I did that pretty well.
Yes, actually. Last month, I was at the grocery store and there was a problem with my payment card. I had to explain the whole situation to the cashier, and I did it. I spoke clearly, I asked questions, and we solved the problem together.
That's fantastic.
I walked out of that store feeling so proud. I realized in real situations, when I'm focused on the goal and not on being perfect, I can communicate really well.
Exactly. That's such an important point. When we focus on communication instead of perfection, everything becomes easier. You were thinking about solving a problem, not about grammar rules.
Yes, exactly.
So tell me, how do you practice your English speaking in daily life? Do you have any special tricks or methods?
Well, I started small. At first, I would practice ordering coffee in English, even though the barista spoke my language. I would repeat my order in my head before saying it out loud.
Smart approach.
Now, I try to have a one real conversation in English every day, maybe with a neighbor, or I call customer service in English instead of my native language. Sometimes I even talk to myself while cooking.
I love that. Talking to yourself is actually a great method. No pressure, no judgment, just practice. And starting with simple things like ordering coffee, that's brilliant. You build confidence with small wins.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I learned? Most people are really patient and kind when they see you're trying. They want to help, not judge you.
That's such an important realization. I'm curious, during all this practice, were there particular types of mistakes that kept coming up? Things that tripped you up repeatedly?
Oh, yes. Articles, and, the, they still confuse me sometimes. I would say, I need to go to the bank when I meant a bank. Or I'd say, I love the pizza when talking about pizza in general. And prepositions? Is it on Monday or at Monday? In the morning or at the morning? I would mix them up constantly.
Oh, articles and prepositions are the classic challenges. Even people who've been speaking English for years sometimes struggle with these. What did you find helped you deal with these kinds of repeated mistakes?
I learned to not get frustrated with myself. When someone corrected me, instead of feeling embarrassed, I started saying, "Thank you for teaching me" out loud. It sounds silly, but it changed my mindset. Corrections became gifts instead of criticism. And I started keeping a little notebook in my phone of phrases that I got wrong with the correct version, like interested in, not interested for. I wrote that down after making the mistake 3 times.
Thank you for teaching me. What a brilliant reframe. You literally turned corrections into a positive learning moment. That phone notebook idea is gold, too. Did you have any other creative practice methods that our listeners might want to try?
Oh, I have so many. I started narrating my daily activities out loud. Like when I'm cooking, I'd say, "Now I'm chopping the onions. I need to be careful not to cut my fingers. The onions are making me cry." It sounds crazy, but it helps you practice describing real situations with real emotions and actions. And I started arguing with myself. Not angry arguments, but like debating. I'd pick a topic. Should schools have uniforms? And argue both sides out loud. I think uniforms are good because then I'd switch. But uniforms are bad because it forces you to organize your thoughts and use persuasive language.
Hannah, these are fantastic techniques. Narrating daily life and self-debate. I love how creative you got with your practice. Now, I want to dig deeper into some of those challenging situations you mentioned. Let's talk about the ones that really make English learners nervous. Beyond phone calls, what situations do people tell you they find most intimidating?
Job interviews are the worst. The pressure is so high, and you have to sell yourself while managing a second language. I remember before my current job, I was so nervous. I practiced common interview questions, but then they asked unexpected things like, tell me about a time you failed at something. My mind went blank because I was translating in my head. And medical appointments. When you're not feeling well and you have to describe symptoms precisely, I once tried to explain stomach pain to a doctor, and I kept saying my stomach is angry because I couldn't remember the word upset. The doctor was so confused. Also, dealing with emergencies. When my daughter fell off her bike and I had to call for help, adrenaline plus English was not a good combination.
Oh, goodness, my stomach is angry. I bet the doctor figured it out, though. Medical and emergency situations are particularly stressful because the stakes feel so high. How did you prepare for these kinds of high pressure, can't avoid situations?
I learned to prepare key phrases in advance. For medical appointments, I wrote down body parts, common symptoms, and questions like, how often should I take this? For emergencies, I practiced saying my address clearly in simple phrases like, my child is hurt or I need an ambulance. I kept these phrases in my phone's notes app so I could read them if I panicked.
That's brilliant. Emergency phrase preparation. What about day-to-day workplace communication? Not just meetings and interviews, but the casual interactions that actually make up most of our work life.
Oh, the coffee machine conversations. They seem so simple, but they're actually complex. People talk about their weekend, their kids, the weather, current events. I realized I was missing out on building relationships because I just smile and nod instead of participating. So I started preparing. I'd think of one interesting thing that happened to me, or I'd check the weather forecast so I could comment on it. And I learned to ask for clarification without feeling stupid. Before, if I didn't understand something, I just pretend I did and hope for the best. Now I say things like, sorry, could you explain that differently? Or, I want to make sure I understand. Do you mean this? People appreciate when you want to get it right instead of guessing wrong later.
That's so important. Asking for clarification is a sign of engagement, not ignorance. Now, something many learners struggle with is dealing with different accents and speaking speeds. Have you had experiences where you could understand one person perfectly, but another person was like a foreign language?
Oh my goodness, yes. I learned English mostly from American movies and TV shows, so when I met my colleague from Scotland, I thought he was speaking a different language. He said we instead of small, and his accent was so thick. And fast talkers, there was this receptionist who spoke like she was in a race. I'd have to ask her to slow down, and she was always very patient about it.
That's such a common experience. English is truly a global language with so many varieties. How did you adapt to dealing with this range of accents and speeds?
I started watching YouTube videos from different English-speaking countries, British cooking shows, Australian news, Canadian documentaries. I realized that understanding variety is just practice, like training your ears. And I learned phrases like, could you speak a bit slower, please? Or, I'm not familiar with that accent. Could you repeat that? Most people don't mind at all.
Such smart strategies. Anna, looking back at your journey from being silent in meetings to being here on this podcast, how do you recognize your progress? Sometimes when we're in the middle of learning, it's hard to see how far we've come.
That's so true. Sometimes I feel like I'm not improving, but then something happens that shows me I am. Like last week, I was explaining a technical problem to IT support, and halfway through, I realized I'm having a complex conversation about computer issues in my second language. 3 years ago, I couldn't even order coffee without rehearsing. Now I'm troubleshooting software. I also notice I worry less about making mistakes now. Before, one grammar error would ruin my whole day. Now, if I say something wrong, I might laugh and correct myself, or I just keep going if the meaning was clear. The perfectionist voice in my head got quieter as my confidence got louder.
I love that. The perfectionist voice got quieter as confidence got louder. That's such a beautiful way to put it. Do you have advice for our listeners on how to recognize and celebrate those small wins along the way?
Yes, keep a success journal, even for tiny things. Today, I asked the cashier how her day was going. I explained why I was late to my boss. I made a joke and people laughed. Write them down because on hard days, you can read them and remember you are improving. Every single conversation is practice, and every practice session makes you stronger.
Absolutely true. People appreciate the effort. Anna, what would you tell someone who is listening right now and thinking, I want to speak English, but I'm too scared to make mistakes?
I would say mistakes are not your enemy. They are your teacher. Every mistake shows you something new. When I said I am exciting instead of excited, I never forgot that rule again.
That's beautiful. Mistakes are your teacher.
And also start very small. Don't try to have deep philosophical conversations on your first day. Say thank you to the bus driver. Ask, how much does this cost at the store? Build your confidence step by step.
Perfect advice. And remember, every single person learning English has felt this fear. You're not alone in this journey.
Yes, and now sitting here talking to you and your listeners, I feel nervous but also excited. This conversation is practice too.
And you're doing amazingly. Anna, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. Your honesty and courage will help so many people.
Thank you for creating this safe space to talk about it.
And to all our listeners out there, remember Anna's words. Mistakes are your teacher. Start small and be patient with yourself. Speaking English is not about being perfect. It's about connecting with people and sharing your thoughts and ideas. Thank you for joining us on Fluent Talk Podcast today. Next week, we'll be discussing how to improve your listening skills with everyday activities. Until then, keep practicing, keep growing, and remember, every word you speak in English is a step forward. Take care. Before we wrap up, Anna, I want to ask you one more question. For someone listening right now who feels inspired but also overwhelmed, maybe they're thinking, I want to start, but I don't know where to begin, what would be your very first step recommendation?
Choose one tiny English interaction you can do today. Just one. Maybe it's saying, thank you, have a great day to someone instead of just thanks, or asking, how are you today to a store worker. Something small that feels just a little bit scary but not overwhelming. Do that one thing, then tomorrow do it again, or try something equally small.
Perfect advice. And listeners, I want to give you some concrete action steps you can take this week. First, identify your safe practice zone. This might be talking to yourself while doing household tasks, or practicing with a pet, or recording voice messages on your phone. Find a place where there's zero judgment and start there. Second, prepare your emergency phrases, like Anna mentioned. Write down how to say your address clearly, how to ask for help, how to ask someone to repeat or slow down. Keep these in your phone's Notes app. You don't have to use them, but knowing they're there will give you confidence. Third, choose one daily routine where you'll practice English out loud. Maybe while making breakfast, you'll describe what you're doing, or during your commute, you'll practice introducing yourself or explaining your job to an imaginary person. Make it a habit, not a chore. And remember, every fluent English speaker you admire was once exactly where you are now. They felt the same nervousness, made the same types of mistakes, had the same frustrating moments where words wouldn't come. The only difference between them and you is time and practice. You're not behind, you're not slow, you're exactly where you need to be in your journey.
And to anyone listening who feels scared,
I was terrified to come on this podcast. I almost canceled 3 times. But here I am, talking to you, sharing my story. If I can do this, if I can go from hiding in meetings to sitting here having this conversation, you can take your next small step too. I believe in you.
Anna, thank you for your courage and sharing such personal experiences with us today. Your vulnerability will help thousands of people realize they're not alone in this struggle. And listeners, I want to leave you with this thought. Your English doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. Your accent is part of your story. Your unique way of expressing yourself is what makes you you. If today's conversation inspired you, here's what you can do right now. First, start that success journal Anna mentioned. Second, write down one small English interaction you'll try this week. Third, find one person in your life who can be your supportive practice partner, someone patient who celebrates your progress, not your perfection. Remember, learning English is not a race, it's a journey. Some days will feel harder than others. Some conversations will go better than others. That's not failure, that's life. Be as patient and kind with yourself as you would be with a friend who is learning your native language. Thank you for spending your time with us today on Fluent Talk Podcast. Anna's story shows us that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to try anyway. Next week, we'll continue this journey together as we explore practical listening strategies that you can use in everyday situations. Until then, remember, every conversation matters. Every mistake teaches, and